What is up, guys? It is DMG here, and today we are going to be doing another starter squad, this time in the Serie A, as you can tell from my Juventus jersey here. Why is that hard? Why is my left nipple hard? Like, my right isn't, but my left is. Whatever. Similar to what we did for the Bundesliga, we are going to be going position by position and seeing what players we could hopefully eventually upgrade to a few months in, seeing what players are good for starter squads, and then seeing how much depth they have for some starter squad options as well. Before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe. That helps me out tremendously, and it's going to give me a lot of motivation and a lot of momentum heading into the start of FIFA 21. So we're going to be starting at the left wing spot. Now there are some higher tier options, and they're not, 89, 90 rated, so I think they could be somewhat affordable even early on in the game. Insigne, Douglas Costa. You have Gozens here, who isn't honestly much of an attacking winger, but more of a left back or a center mid or a left mid in a 3-5-2. So depending on how you use him, he could be a very good center mid or a very good player in general. Similar to Lulic here, I think he's going to be a very similar card to Gozens. You do have Gervinho as a speedy option here. You do have Johnny as well as kind of a passing, dribbling pace, maybe kind of a center attacking mid type player. But besides some of these players that fit somewhat specific roles, there's not really a whole lot of depth. In terms of an attacking winger, the only one that you really have that's not, higher rated like Douglas Costa and Insigne is going to be Gervinho. Next up is the striker spot, and I think we can all agree there are some fantastic options to eventually upgrade to. Obviously, there's Ronaldo, there's Dybala, there's Immobile, Mertens, Lukaku, and then there's also some options that, yes, are going to be more expensive, but they're not going to be as expensive as, again, Ronaldo or Dybala. So there is Lautaro Martinez, there's Zapata, who honestly is not that bad. Correa is a good option to maybe start out with. Ribéry, while he's not the fastest, he will have hopefully 5-star as he did in FIFA 20. Caputo is a good cheap option, it seems like. He's also Italian, so hopefully he'll be able to link up with some good players. Kisa also looks to be a good option. His shooting's not the best. However, if you put a Deadeye or a Sniper up, that's going to increase his shooting significantly. Same thing for Verdi, actually. These two cards right here could be very good cheap options, especially if you put a Deadeye or a Sniper on them to increase their finishing. Next is the right wing spot, and I have to say there's not a whole lot of top tier options. Callejon has a decent card, but as we know, in the past he's had 2-star weak foot, only 3-star skills. But in terms of starting wingers, there are a few good options. Politano is one of them. Lozano is one of them. Berardi could, I think, actually be a decent enough attacking winger in terms of being like a striker or a center forward. You have Under here, who actually has a tremendous starting card, in my opinion. Very good all-around stats there. And then you have Hatzebor, who's very similar to Gozens in that he's not necessarily an attacking winger, but more of a right mid who will play in a 3-5-2 or even potentially a right back considering his defending and his physical. Next up is the midfielder spot, so center attacking mid, center defensive mid. So looking at it, there are some good options to eventually upgrade to. Gomez, Milinkovic-Savic, Luis Alberto Eriksson, all top tier options. And then in terms of maybe some cheaper options, there are some good ones there too. Nainggolan, who might be a little bit more expensive, but I think will still be somewhat affordable in the early few weeks of FIFA. There's also Benaventura, there's Zielinski, there's Bernardeschi, who will all be solid options in the midfield, and Bernardeschi would also be very good as a center attacking mid, especially with his 5-star skills. There's also Barella, there's also Pellegrini, there's also Bentancur, although his shooting is not necessarily the best. There's also Kessié, there's DePaul, who I personally really like, and then there's also Tonali if you need a more defensive-minded player who can also pass. So with the three that we chose, I just went with these three just because they kind of fit in the three spots in the midfield, such as center attacking mid, center mid, and then center defensive mid. Obviously, Bernardeschi is going to be better going forward. Zielinski is definitely more of a center mid just because he has the ability to go forward and to go back. And then Kessié is definitely a center defensive mid considering his physical and his defending. Next up, we have left back, and unfortunately, I only really see a couple of options here. Obviously, Alexandro, I think, is going to be decent. However, Theo Hernandez here, I think might be the go-to for the vast majority of FIFA players, mainly because of his pace. And because of that, that's going to make him more expensive at the start. In terms of other usable left backs, there's again Mario Rui, who has, decent enough pace, and everyone else is 73 or lower. So I don't really think there's a whole lot of good options in at left back. Now going to the opposite side, we have the right back position, and contrary to the left back spot, there are actually some decent enough options, especially with depth. There's Quadrado, there's Florenzi, there's Hisage, who again isn't necessarily the best, but at least is better than some other options at left back. There's Malqui, there's Bruno Perez, who we actually have not seen in a little bit, so that's good to see him making a comeback. There's even Conte here, who looks a little bit better than some of the left backs that we saw. So again, some good options, some good depth here. Personally, I'm just going to go with Malqui just because he has a decent all-around card. To round off the outfield players, we are ending with center back, and there's some really solid top-tier options to go with Koulibaly, Chiellini, Skriniar, De Ligt. Even De Ligt, I think, might be somewhat affordable considering he's only 85 overall. And then some of the cheaper options, Manolas got a -2 downgrade. Now, he is going to be more expensive because 82 pace and 85 defending for a center back is pretty nuts. But even then, there are still some other good options such as Romagnoli, and Kulu isn't even the worst option either. And you also have Maria, who is back at Sampdoria after going out on loan to Valencia. And finally, to end it, we are going to be looking at the goalie spot. We have some good top tier options here. The first 3, 4, 5 players are all solid options. You also have some good mid-tier options as well with Perin, Strakosha, Cragno, Consigli. I mean, you do have some solid options here. Considering that there's a lot of decent enough overalls here. It's not like it's all either 75 or 84. There's some good options in between. So personally, it's just whatever you need for links, and it's whatever you personally want to have. Personally, I'm just going to go with Cragno just because of his insane diving and his insane reflexes. So we have found some of our starting players that we want to use for the Serie A. Now, going from position to position, this is not nearly as strong as the Bundesliga, unfortunately. There's not nearly as much depth per position compared to the Bundesliga, and there's not a whole lot of top tier options per position. Yes, you obviously have some great players in Cristiano Ronaldo, Koulibaly, Chiellini, etc., and there's also Handanovic. There's a plethora of great goalies as well. But if you look at defensive mids, there's really not any great ones. If you look at right wingers, there's not really any great ones. Left wing, there's only Douglas Costa and Insigne that you eventually want to upgrade to, so there will be wingers who are essentially better than them. And there's also not a lot of good options at left back, meaning that if you want to use a left back from the Serie A, you either have to shell out a whole bunch of coins, or you're going to have to use a left back that's not that great. So in terms of using a full Serie A side for your starter team, I would advise against it because, again, there's not really a whole lot of great options. If you compare this team to the Bundesliga team that we made in the previous video, I would say the Bundesliga team is a lot stronger, and along with that, there's also some more depth. So that is going to be it for this Serie A starter squad builder. And again, unfortunately, it's just not that strong. But again, there are some decent options where if you do manage to pack some really solid player at the start, then it could be decent. But overall, I do think there are some better options. So like I said, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been DMG. Peace.